NSW, what have you found out about someone that you would never tell them you know? Witnessed a mate secretly try to suck his own dong. He was successful, forever and sure to give kudos or not. My roommate punched himself in the eye and faked being jumped because his girlfriend was about to break up with him. They are now married. My father admitted that he pressured my mother into an abortion before my brother and I were born. It was a huge wake-up call that kept me from going down a pretty crappy road with a guy I worked with, but I'll never forget the look on his face when he admitted that to me, and I will never tell her that I know. I saw my mom giving my dad a handy BJ while I was sleeping in the backseat of the car. Problem is I woke up and this crap was going on, so I had to pretend I was still sleeping. I was about 7 or 8 at the time. You're real bro to your daddy-o. My cousin was adopted when she was a baby. This is a family secret, as in everyone in the family but her knows. I knew since I was 5. What really sucks is that she already had suspicion, and when she was 16 asked her mother, my aunt, and was told straight up that she was not adopted. The reason why she was suspicious? 1. A great uncle came to my grandfather's funeral, and when he shook hands with my cousin he said to her face, "Oh, is this the girl that aunt's name adopted?" 2. She learned about blood types in biology class and her blood type couldn't have matched with her parents. 3. She's technically of different ethnicity than us, and it's pretty obvious. Another thing that really sucks is that my aunt has a lot of small business investments, but she lamented to my dad that she did not want to give any to my cousin in her will. She wanted all of them to go to her brother, bio son, and she thought sending my cousin to university was already more than enough. Now my cousin is very detached from the whole family, immediate and extended, and somehow everyone thinks something is wrong with her. I have told my parents that I thought it would be best for her to just know she's adopted, but my parents wouldn't meddle in my aunt's family's business. Cultural thing. It sucks that they seem to treat her as someone who's not equal to her brother. I know a guy I grew up with who was hit all the time by his on-off alcoholic lumberjack dad. One day the dad died from some heart failure or whatnot, and when the cause of death report came out, it claimed he had been conscious after the incident had happened before he had died. My friend had told the police he had not been home but had biked to a friend's house to see if he wanted to go play basketball. I found out later at a party where we were drunk, when I asked him how it had been to come home to dead dad, that he had been home all the time and had heard his dad scream, gasp in pain and fall over, but that he had just stood there, first empty then smiling as his dad withered in pain and slowly expired into unconsciousness and died. Then when my friend was certain his dad was not waking up again, he called 911. Don't hit your kids and expect them to come through for you. Holy crap. I found out my grandpa used to sew big pockets into the inside of his jacket so he could more effectively shoplift. I found out my dad won the lottery. He won around $250,000 and has never told me or my brothers. It took some digging to find, so I never told anyone because I figure if he hasn't told his family then he doesn't want anyone to know. Good move on his part. People will come out of the woodwork for that, even if it isn't a lot of money, and anything you give them as a gift when you win is never enough. Best friend, mid-30s, visits his parents and relatives late on Christmas Eve 2014 and quietly comes in late through the rear of the house carrying gifts. His extended family are in the living room discussing how it's surreal he doesn't know his aunt and uncle are his real parents and his parents are his aunt and uncle. Turns out at 17 they had him while dating in HS and gave him up to the older childless married aunt uncle who had been trying to conceive for many years. The stress of trying to have a child gone, the adoptive parents then had 3 kids in 4 years, his cousins. His real parents married a few years after his adoption and went on to have 3 children, his biological siblings. To this day everyone thinks he doesn't know and he has never let on to them he does. He has no hard feelings, but it was a shocker. The person knows I know, but I would never tell my family. When my cousin was 5 or 6 he was not part of our family yet. My uncle met his mom and they fell in love and moved in with each other. My cousin was still with his dad and my uncle and aunt were trying to get custody, but her ex was a very wealthy man. Apparently he was also sexually abusing my cousin, but it was hard to prove and her ex had some really good lawyers. My uncle was not a rich man, but they needed money for a lawyer and a special therapist for my cousin so they could win the case. He robbed his workplace for the cash to pay all the fees needed to get my cousin away from his dad. My uncle's work found out and had him arrested. He had to go to jail for 2 years. He told my family and everyone that he got a job abroad and had to leave for a few years so that he could pay for my cousin's lawyers. Everyone in my family still thinks that he went abroad to make extra cash. Only me and his wife know that he was in jail. My cousin is a very successful, well-adjusted, happy man now. He doesn't really remember anything about living with his dad. My uncle says he would do it again 1,000 times if it meant my cousin growing up safe. I found the dong pics my son-in-law sent my daughter. She had backed up her computer to an external hard drive and didn't realize they went to. When I first got married, my sister-in-law was living with us. One day, while she was at work, she called and asked that I email something to her from her desktop. This was prior to texting and email on phones being so prevalent. So, I used her laptop and her Outlook to send the attachment. I checked the sent items to make sure it went through with the attachment and found an email she had sent to someone of a bunch of pictures of her with lit candles shoved up her butt. I never said anything but had to start hiding all of our stick candles in fear that she'd butt tip all my Yankees. Should have just bought bigger candles. My ex used to go through my browser history and emails. She never found anything, but always thought I was up to something. I knew this because I read her diary every day. Sounds like you two were made for each other, buddy. One day while looking through Flickr, I came across some nude pictures of my coworker. She has lots of photo albums on her account. Turns out she and her husband are swingers. I work with her on a daily basis. I would never tell her I have seen them. Every single one of them. I recently discovered that my coworker's girlfriend jacked him off with a burrito and then forced him to eat it. But that's his business, and our coworkers can be brutal, especially towards him, as he does come off a bit strange. So there's no need to make things worse for him. I'll never tell my family I know I was a twin. One of my grandmothers got drunk at Christmas and started to talk about it one year when I was a kid. Part of me wants to say she was wrong, but the look of horror in some families' faces before they had me leave to play with cousins always made it stick out. It would explain the lack of baby pictures and why I was baptized really early, like few days old. I don't know what happened to my twin. This one is a bit darker. My mom passed away a few years ago from cancer. She went for an operation for something mundane and they found out she had cancer. My parents worked hard and were good at saving. My mom managed the finances and did an amazing job. Now my dad is alone and keeps on telling me, "I wish your mom was here. I don't know what to do with all this money. She would have known how to spend it together." The sad truth is, before my mom went for her operation, she planned on leaving my dad after the whole ordeal was over. She told this to me privately. My dad basically told me the same thing privately. After she got diagnosed, he stood by her side and worked from home for months so he could take care of her. He also did an amazing job arranging all aspects of her funeral, even though my mom entrusted that to her sisters. I told my sister, but I don't think I could ever tell him. A close friend that I roomed with at college once had me log into their email to print out tickets. Found the tickets but also a decent amount of evidence that he had a strong scat fetish. Not sure that there is ever a way to bring that up in conversation. Tip: use a separate email for P and business. I have a couple friends who are siblings in our friends group. Myself and 2 others were in a Skype call with the younger sister while the older one was at work. We essentially heard her admit she was going to commit suicide that day. We had figured she was depressed and tried to help her the best we could. The 3 of us and a couple parents ended up at her dad's house and found her with her wrist sliced open in the bathtub and out cold from ODing. I slapped a tourniquet on and used towels to try to stop the bleeding while a parent called an ambulance. The responding paramedics said that even though she didn't cut her wrists properly, she still would have died if we didn't show up and try to stop the bleeding. Her older sister doesn't know due to her parents' request, and it's a closely kept secret in the group. Whoever wasn't there doesn't know. Her father, who hated me for different reasons, always invites me out to different events, but still keeps up the impression he doesn't like me. It's kind of weird. One of my good friends is HIV positive. I found out through the grapevine and immediately understood that I shouldn't know that about him. I've never said anything about it to him, but I've made a distinct effort to be more available to him as a friend. I figure if he ever wants to tell me, he will. If not, he could still use some kindness in his life. A bummy kid we had to gently eject from a gallery opening spent his exit begging for a few bucks, offering to suck anyone's dong for $10. It was an odd moment anyway, capped by an odd, sad offer. Later, I went out on the fire escape for a smoke. In the alley below was a straight acquaintance, like square straight, married with kids and a boring career, leaning against the wall, bum guy's head bobbing against his crotch, getting a $10 beach from a sketchy tweaker. My first instinct was to make some noise. My second was I just don't want to be involved in this. Of course, upon re-entering the party, acquaintance's wife was the first goddamned person who spoke to me. Hey, have you seen Bob? Is he out sneaking a smoke? It was a weird moment. I've said nothing for a decade. I'm pretty sure I'd be speechless for a decade after that too. When my brother came to visit for the holidays, he left his iPad on the counter and had Reddit up. I saw his username and that he had a ton of post karma. Went back to my computer and looked him up. Cuckpea. Most of him and his ex-wife. Some with his new fiancée. It was pretty traumatizing. I discovered that an employee who claimed to be a Yale grad on his resume had never stepped foot on the campus. He was liked by the boss and some co-workers, so confronting him on this would have caused quite a scene. I teach improv and found out one of my students is a former senator who had to give up his seat due to allegations of cheating on his wife with younger women. It's so weird cause he's such a nice guy, and I've met his family. Classic case of finding out what kind of pee someone is into watching. On New Year's Eve, my mom's friend asked me to connect her phone to the Bluetooth in her car. It takes about 5 seconds and one button to do, so I agreed to help. She unlocked her phone, gives me the keys, and I got into the car. Phone is connected and I want to test out the speakers and crank the volume up. I opened Google Chrome to play some music and I'm greeted by a Pornhub video called Anal Frick. I noticed she had 45 tabs open. Curious if she had an impressive 45 porno videos open. I looked at the other tabs. One was a video where a girl was vacuum sealing plastic wrap on her vag. There was also women getting fricked by dogs and some bestiality crap. I had quite enough of that and put some music on. Speakers were good. Got pretty loud with decent bass. That my grandmother was secretly a spendthrift and victim of fraud. Both of my grandparents passed away recently. My grandfather had been in poor health for the last several years of his life. My grandmother was his caretaker and she herself was in relatively good health. It was quite a shock then when my father and I found her dead in the garage from a massive heart attack. My grandfather, heartbroken and confused, died 3 months later. When we started go through their belongings to settle the estate when found tons of worthless things that she had spent their money on. Now, my grandmother loved to shop, but we had no idea her addiction ran this deep. In addition to the myriads of junk, we found hundreds of letters from people who had scammed her into giving them money. The kinds of scams where they will send you $10,000 if you send them a check for $1,000. I can remember just sitting down at the kitchen table with unsent letters she had written to people asking them where her checks were and why they had lied to her. It was heart-wrenching. So, her spending addiction of worthless trinkets and thousands of dollars spent on get-rich-quick schemes basically bankrupted them and we knew nothing about it. We never even suspected it because she was the vice president of a bank for 42 years. She was always good with money. I always thought those Ponzi scheme Nigerian prince email type things were a load of crap. Who could fall for them? Well, now I know who they target and why they're so successful. Everything has been settled now, but it was a really rough year for my dad. I know of a single mom struggling to pay bills. Her ex-husband quit his job so he doesn't pay child support. She drives over to the next state to strip for money. I know she's ashamed and I'd never tell her or anyone else. She's trying to finish school while working another job too. A manager in my office handed me her phone to look at a picture and got distracted talking to someone else. A text came in from a woman who talked quite graphically about what she had done to this manager the night before. I handed the phone back and pretended not to have seen the text. I didn't have a clue she was gay. My dad cheated on his wife with my mom. They still weren't divorced when he started seeing my mom. Even Ma doesn't know. One of those P sidebar ads used a picture of one of my friends. No matter how much P you watch of them doesn't make you friends. My sister's boyfriend, while a great guy now, was a troubled youth. He grew up with his grandparents as his dad is in prison and his mom is unreliable. Drugs. Once when he was a teenager, he was so angry at his grandfather for some reason so he used his toothbrush to clean the toilet. Funny, right? His grandfather contracted a bacterial infection so bad that he ended up losing all of his teeth and now wears dentures. I'll never bring this up to him because he is a genuinely changed person. I knew him when he was in high school, and he's nothing like the person he used to be. And I bet he still feels incredibly guilty about doing that. Coworker had really off behavior. Had a spot out by the dumpster he'd smoke dope at. Constantly tried showing me pics of his pet snake feeding on rats, would stop and stare at young female customers and make weird remarks about them. I did a little internet sleuthing and found out he was a registered sex offender. He'd groped his stepdaughter. His new address was a city away from the old address. On a hunch, I made a call to the local parole officer, and yep, he hadn't registered in a year. His PO rolled him up and sent him back to jail a week later. I never told anyone how his PO found him. I know that one of my best friends from high school college fricked his sister for an extended period of time. I actually sort of on and off dated her for a while and during that time he got really weird. Of course at the time I assumed it was just a hey you're banging my sister this is awkward kind of thing. Later on he and I were roommates and she and I had long since stopped any romantic interests. I used to work Saturday mornings pretty much every week. However, one week I was off and I guess he thought I was gone. I came downstairs and was trying to find him to see if he wanted to do anything that day. It ended up he was in the basement bathroom, where we usually showered and stuff. Before I realized that I went in his room where his computer was and there was a list of files pulled up in one window, dating over about a 3-year period. In another window there was a video up that he was obviously editing and it was very clearly him fricking his sister in the very room I was standing in. All the files were named stuff like me and B12,162,004 and stuff like that, making it pretty clear. I ran back upstairs and stayed in bed for a while. So all those P videos you see on the internet under the siblings section may not 100% be fiction. Like this video and this good boy will play you a nice song. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.